Hi guys and ladies, welcome to another video. Today we have another first impression. As you know, I'm slowly working my way through the sample set that Russian Adam was kind enough to send me, and I'm really enjoying getting to experience some of these fragrances. Even though I'll probably never own a full bottle of most of these, the experience has been a big honor to me to get to smell some of these. I never thought I would ever be able to smell these fragrances. So again, Russian Adam, thank you. I really do appreciate it. It's very kind of you. Today, we're going to focus on a fragrance that came out in 2019, I believe, and it's called Antiquity. Now, Antiquity is a fragrance that when you first spray, let me try to take you through the scent from my eyes in the first 6 hours or so on my skin. And then I do have a fresh spray, and I'll talk a little bit about the opening and kind of what I get from it. I did do my usual notes. And so here is what the Areej Doré website says. So let me read you the blurb, and then I'll kind of tell you my thoughts on the fragrance. So it says, this perfume represents a long gone era. It is composed using truly unique, vintage, highly matured raw materials, including outstanding wild Cambodian agarwood oil from 1975. Now, I do have a couple real oud fragrances, like for example, Oud Maximus is my favorite real oud fragrance that I have a full bottle of. This has a ton of different types of ouds, but I love, you get this, you get this definite moldy oud skank, and I think value for money of Oud Maximus, whether you can get the 18, 19, or 20 version, is through the roof, especially when Frederick Malle is selling their fragrances like the Night for thousands. So Oud Maximus is one. The other one is Mysterious Oud, which I like Oud Maximus more. Mysterious Oud takes a backseat, but I do like this oriental, orangey, ambery feel. And the reason that I bring these two fragrances up is that this opens up with a definite real oud accord. In fact, it smells in the beginning a little bit like it's springtime here in Texas, and they're putting fertilizer on all the flower beds. And when you walk by someone's flower bed that just had fresh fertilizer put on, and it has a bit of that skanky manure type quality to it, this opens up a little bit like fertilizer. But the best way I can describe the oud to my nose is a bit like a rotting wood accord with some fertilizer and some almost like, when you paint a wall and it has that fresh industrial paint like smell, and even if you go away and come back hours later, it's there for the first couple days. This has that. It has that industrial smell, and I'll come back to that later on. But I want to read you the description. The description that Russian Adam has written on the website is this. It says, the composition consists of around 70% beautifully aged, absolutely unique, antique materials dating from 1920 to 1985, my birth year. The use of such refined, mature ingredients results in a truly remarkable, rare experience that allows the wearer to be transported into the past to a golden era of perfumery. Antiquity opens up with a delicious, radiating, silky smooth peach aldehyde and dry, dusty bergamot that is bursting with myriad spices, woody facets. Residing in the heart of Antiquity is one of the most complex and beautiful carnation accords, dating back to 1920 to 1930. It indeed captures an entire universe in itself. Spicy, warm, lush florals morph from red to blackest black, swelling the wearer into infinity. On the periphery, angelica root essence adds to the spiciness and enhances the incredible depths of carnation. Further beyond lies a touch of pure and wild, mysterious Cambodian oud. It is here, in this otherworldly space, that one enjoys whispers of dark and resinous tobacco notes, molasses, and a banquet of dry plums and berries with unmistakable incense-laden, soft, oudy nuances. The core of the composition is planted firmly upon 3 types of vintage patchouli oils from a long ago era, and the patchoulis do make an appearance. Each one of these oils could easily stand alone, a fine perfume in its own right. Chocolatey, earthy, smoothie, and refined, they shine exponentially brighter in combination with Areej signature ingredients, amber resins, and deep green Indian oak moss. Vintage Cuir de Russie accord combined with aged muscatone tincture creates a gentle touch of velvety worn leather. Entwined are silky threads of ambery oak moss, all woven together to fabricate an intricately detailed base. The perfectly matured aromatic substances in this composition all share a touch of the mysterious, an antique aroma that can't be replicated with newer materials. Thoughtfully combined, they produce an aura that can hardly be described in words. They must be inhaled, lived, and experienced to be truly understood. This is the scent of a bygone era of perfumery. This is the scent of antiquity. Now, I usually don't read the entire blurb like that, but this one's a little bit complex. So I wanted to give you the idea from the brand, but here's the notes. So the top notes have peach aldehydes, 1930s. Bergamot 1940 to 1950s. So I'm guessing that they got their hands on some rare, ingredients from the past. Heart notes, carnation 1920 to 1930, Cambodian oud 1975, angelica root 1930 to 1950, patchouli 1940 to 1950, base notes, Cuir de Russie accord 1930 to 1950, muscatone 1930 to 1950, patchouli 1985 and 2017. Amber resin, and oak moss. Now, so that is a pretty detailed note listing, especially the dates. It's very interesting to me. Some of these long lost, materials, part of my mind thinks this is one of the coolest things I've ever heard, to be able to work with something that Jacques Guerlain worked with back in the day, or whatever it may be. One of the great perfumers of the past, Ernst Beau. I think this is like one of the coolest things ever. But part of me says, I wonder how it's changed over the years. I wonder if the peach aldehyde from 1930 smelled a little bit different. But I'll tell you from the get-go, you get that oud accord, but you also get that vintage, like this. You get this vintage Chanel No. 5 aldehydic vibe in the opening. And I didn't include the samples of some of the other Areej scents in my This Is Not a Top 10 aldehyde video, but you could have. There were some other fragrances other than Antiquity that used aldehydes in the opening. And they're actually used really beautifully here. I talked a little bit about the peach aldehyde being more of a lactone than a true aldehyde in that video. And so what I want you to think about when I walk you through the opening is you definitely get that real oud, fertilizer, manure, industrial paint thinner smell. But from a personal experience, what I really got is, if you remember some of my other Areej Doré first impression videos, okay? So go back to something like Ottoman Empire, or go back to something like War and Peace, which I just did a couple weeks ago. And I instantly loved those fragrances. They were instant smash hits for me. Those two, the Animalics and War and Peace, and just the grandness of Ottoman Empire. Ottoman Empire really felt like you're looking at different parts of a map from on high, and you're controlling all the pieces. Like you're the ruler of the Ottoman Empire. It's that grand of a perfume. This one, it wasn't an instant love. It was something that I put it on and I started to say, okay, this is interesting. But the more that I wore it and really started to break it down, the more that I really started to appreciate the fragrance for the idea it takes. Antiquity, right? Going back into the past. And what you feel, so the Russian leather, the Cuir de Russie accord, one of my favorite fragrances of all time is Cuir de Russie by Chanel. This is a vintage bottle from the 80s. This is one of my most prized possessions. You've seen it on other videos that I've done. But as far as, fragrances from the olden days, I mentioned the aldehydes from Chanel number 5, but also the Russian leather from the vintage Chanel Cuir de Russie. This is the eau de toilette, which I sent a sample to my partner in crime, Rich Mitch across the pond. He said that his version of the eau de toilette, which is the current one that they put in the Les Exclusifs in 2007, is much less or is much more floral than this one. This one's much more heavier on the dirtier leather, and it kind of skips a lot of the floral phases. And you do get this leathery aspect that really, I sprayed this about 11, 12 minutes ago, and it's already starting to come out. That Russian leather is starting to come out. And what it feels like is it feels like they've taken oud chips that maybe even were burnt before and then put out or something like that, or maybe one of them is burnt and the rest of them are, still just haven't been burnt yet. And you wrap them in like a Russian leather sack, and you tie the sack, and so you have the Russian leather on the outside, but you have the aroma from the oud chips burning on the inside. And it definitely feels like the ingredients, when you smell this, you will definitely feel like you're getting something with the highest quality ingredients. And that's important when you're paying this kind of money for a scent. Ingredients, top notch. But what really kind of started to take my imagination on this scent, and the reason that I would put this up there with the other big dog scents from Areej Doré I talked about, like Ottoman Empire and War and Peace, is that this scent takes me on a journey. This scent feels like, so the aldehydes in the opening, speaking of things gone past, remember those cameras they used to have in the old days? And there would be like this flash bulb, and there would literally be a bulb that would create this blinding flash light so that the old school camera could capture the picture. That's what the aldehydes in the opening hit me like. It hit me like a flash bulb camera from the past, like this blinding bulb of light. And then I started to think about, okay, what in the past does this remind me of? And I thought about that industrial quality, because this does have that industrial quality to it. It almost feels like the oud gives off this paint, like you just painted a room and walked out and came back type of accord. And it reminded me of almost like you're sitting on a train, but not a modern train, not a fast bullet train, but an old school train from the past where they're shoveling coal into the engine, and you get the smoke coming out of the train, and you're seeing the countryside, but you're seeing it from the late 1800s or early 1900s, and you see the Industrial Revolution play out. You see factories being built. You see them putting out smoke into the air. And you're sitting on maybe like a old leather travel bag that you bring with you. And that leather travel bag used to be in a very old school carriage, maybe like, horse and buggy old school. I've often said, if you watch my old reviews on Cuir de Russie by Chanel, this is one of my favorite leather fragrances of all time. This is actually one of my favorite fragrances of all time, period. I think this is a pure masterpiece. God. And, I've often said that this gives me a similar kind of insane tale in my head, because this takes me back to, Russia in the 1920s or 1910s, or early 1900s, before the Communist Revolution. This takes me back to Anastasia, Romanov, Nicholas, the Tsar Nicholas II, or I'm good with history, but I'm not good enough to remember it off the top of my head. But, if you've watched like old movies or documentaries, and you heard the story of the royal family of Russia being hunted down and executed, and you get that sense that, they were living a very lavish lifestyle at the time while their country was suffering. And in that lavish lifestyle was, banquet halls of food and beautiful dresses and jewelry that was, worth more than the lifetime's wage of, any of the normal citizens of Russia. And, you have this, again, a flashbulb image of somebody else's life, some person who was royalty back then, their life. And that's what it reminds me of. It reminds me of, I get this very, from Queer de Russie, I get this very like horse stable, animalic smell, but somehow I could wear this anytime. Like it has that Chanel classiness, but it has this horses, you're riding in a horse carriage and it's winter and it's snowing. You were just at a banquet. Your date has one of the most beautiful dresses on you could ever imagine with jewelry and that kind of thing. But there's some, you're with horses. There's horse manure on the ground. There's some animalic aspects to it. It's not all sanitized like it is today. Today, everything is very sanitized. You get in your car, you're driving in a car that has EPA protections on it. You don't smell the exhaust like you did from the 60s, 70s. I'm in an air-conditioned environment today that has HEPA filter and all this stuff. It's completely sanitized, not just our environment, but also the language, what we hear, what we see. Everything is completely sterilized. If you say anything off the beaten track, you're canceled, that kind of thing. This reminds me of, I keep going back to Queer de Russie because this is the closest fragrance that reminds me of, has that mental image of a story. I'm taken back to Russia before the Communist Revolution. And part of that maybe is because the story of this has to do with Russian leather. And part of it is also because Coco Chanel had an affair with one of the royals of Russia. I don't know the full details. I apologize, but it is public information. You can look it up. And Antiquity does something very similar, and that's very special for a fragrance. This is not something, I'm not just BSing here. I'm pouring my heart out. I mean, this is literally how I feel. It gives me vibes of that story of going to the past, just mentally taking you back to a point in time. In the dry down, you do start to detect this a little bit of chocolatiness, and I think that's from the patchouli, obviously. You get a little bit of this amber resin oak moss thing in the base, like I said. I don't get very much angelica root. That's something I was hoping to pick up a little bit more on, but maybe it's used just as a, to round everything out. But it does feel very vintage. It does feel animalic. It does feel like you could be smelling the back end of a horse or a fertilizer that just got put down from the oud. The oud is a little bit fecal, a little bit animalic. This could be challenging for somebody who is new to perfume. If you're gonna smell this and expect to just wear Bleu de Chanel and throw it on and smell good and go anywhere, any place, this is not the fragrance for you. This is for the true connoisseur. This is for somebody that wants to put it on and dream that, what if Jacques Guerlain used oud in the 1930s? What would a Guerlain from the 1930s with oud smell like? It would probably smell something like this. And that's a big compliment for a fragrance to say. I mean, it's impossible to know what a Guerlain from the 1930s with oud would smell like because the French didn't use oud back then. But, that's the kind of off the beaten path thought process that this takes me on. It takes me on sitting on a steam engine train, going past, maybe you're, instead of passing individual factories, you're passing different years in history with the Industrial Revolution progressing because it has that industrial quality about it. And so I know I'm being a little bit ambiguous with the way I'm describing this. I'm not necessarily saying that the queer element feels like this or the peach aldehyde element feels like that. But this fragrance more paints just a picture in my mind. You know, it really is almost like a time machine. The name is perfect. This is one of the best named. This and Ottoman Empire and War and Peace. I mean, those three are kind of some of my favorite names that I've heard on the Areej Doré house. This is named to perfection. Antiquity is really perfect. It almost also feels like, you know, it feels like you could be traveling back even further in time than just the years we're talking about, that you could be going back to like, you know, when Genghis Khan was terrorizing Asia, or I mean, literally, you could take this any direction that your brain wants to go with it, because it is such a beautiful concoction. And you know, this is clearly why there's such a you know, why people just go buy Russian Adam's work without ever smelling it is they're hoping for something like this. And even if they buy a couple that they strike out on, I could totally see, you know, if 1 out of 3 or 4 turned into something like this for a frag head like me, I mean, that would be a win. This is special juice. So far, those 3 are my favorites. Some of the other ones I've liked, but they haven't moved me. Like, you know, Chinese Oud was nice, but it didn't really move me. Manly, I didn't think it was worth the money. But I'll tell you what, when they hit, they knock it out of the park. They don't hit singles and doubles. You know, they're swinging for the fences, and it's just a shame that, you know, this kind of stuff just can't be recreated. I understand the materials are rare and limited, but God, it would be great to just be able to go and just place an order for this anytime without it being sold out. But that's the price you have to pay for something that is rare and uses limited ingredients and stuff like that. So takes you back to the golden era of perfumery. Yes. Is it highly raw material oriented? Yes. Is it unique? Yes. Is it vintage? Yes. Is the oud amazing? I'm not an oud expert, but from, I mean, what I know and what I've smelled and what I've tried, I like it. I like the oud in this. It's a little bit animalic. It's a little bit rotting wood. It's a little bit fertilizer smell with that industrial fresh paint thing. Is new. I don't think I've smelled an oud that has that in it before. But that could be a mixture of other things as well. There's definitely a little bit of this musky feel to this. It says muscatone. I don't know exactly what differences muscatone from 1930 to 1950 had versus today. So that's the problem with breaking this down. I mean, even someone like me who is a true fragrance enthusiast, you know, I'm doing this video on my lunch break. And so even somebody like me is having a hard time describing it, because these fragrances are so off the beaten path. But that's what I love about them so far. That's why I buy stuff like Bortnikov, or, you know, that's why I would buy something like this, is it's so different. It's not the new 1000th Flanker from Paco Rabanne, or you know, it's not the new Azzaro Wanted franchise. It's something different, and that's really what true fragrance enthusiasts want. We want something unique. We want something different. We want something risky that takes a chance. We want, you know, we want all those things. And Antiquity definitely delivers. The sad part is that, you know, I'm going to put this review up, and I'm sure someone's going to watch it and go, wow, that sounds great. They're going to go look on eBay and realize they have to pay 3 or 4 times what it was originally going for. Areej Doré fragrances are not cheap, unfortunately. But if you can smell this, if you can get a sample, if you can test it, if you have a chance to, if you have the pleasure to smell this one day, this, War and Peace, and Ottoman Empire 1 and 2 would be my recommendations to try to get your nose on from the house. They are some of the best. I also really liked Russian Oud, and the natural, even though I'm not the biggest musk fan, the natural musks are beautiful. So, I mean, I don't know what to say. I don't know what more I can say about this other than it took me on a journey. I'm enjoying the wear. Would I pay $1,000 in the secondary market to get a bottle of this? Probably not. But that's just because money is not an unlimited thing for me. If I was filthy rich and money didn't matter, if you wanted to go flex on somebody, sure, this is definitely one to put on the list. I mean, you would smell completely unique. Could you imagine wearing this to a club? You know, you might have to get into like a debate or something, screaming at each other over the loud music about the Industrial Revolution and how it changed society, or you know, it's definitely for the person that likes to use this, and this the brain and the heart is what these fragrances are for. People who like to you know, daydream and think, and someone that appreciates. Nobody, I said this on my Civet de Nuit video, nobody could make a fragrance like this without truly understanding what came before. I mean, this is, I think this is just as much a shout out and homage to the great houses of the past, Chanel, Guerlain, you know, stuff like that. It's a shout out to who came before and what came before, as much as it's a, you know, documentation for us to kind of take that trip to the past, you know, to enter the time machine and see where it takes you. And so that's what I have to say about it. I know I was a little bit, like I said, obscure, ambiguous, but I couldn't think of another way to describe it other than just to describe kind of what it made me think about today. And I do get this passage of time. I get this, I also get one thing my brain was thinking about as I went off on a tangent, and this is a big tangent video, so if this is not your thing, I do apologize. But you know, there is some dirtiness to this. There's some ugliness to this. There's some animalic facets to this. There's something about it that I guess if you got into a time machine and you went to the past, things wouldn't be as rosy as they are today necessarily. You would find some ugliness. You would find death and wars. You would find disease. You would find, you know, society somewhat backwards. You would find that, you know, there was a royal class, a privileged class, and then everyone else underneath that, that, you know, really everything flowed downhill. They got the hard side of life. So I was thinking a little bit about that as wearing this today, that if we did have a chance to go back to antiquity, to years, decades, centuries gone past, there would be parts of it that would kind of shock us, that would, you know, make us realize just how lucky we have it nowadays. That all we have to do is put our trash out on the street and someone comes and picks it up. That all we have to do is drive to the supermarket and get our food and bam, it's there. And in the old days, you know, go look at pictures of Paris from the 1700s. They just threw their trash out the window and just let it build up on the streets. And you have the rats, you have the bubonic plague, you have all that stuff from the past. That's ugly. And there is some ugliness to this. And I like that because that kind of makes it real, you know. It makes it tangible, not just sanitized. That's the word. We were talking about that earlier. Not just a sanitized version of history. It really can give you almost like that flashbulb of antiquity, of days gone past. And you get the beautifulness from some of the notes. I mean, the carnation, the peach aldehydes, the bergamot, I love leather. I'm a leather junkie. I'm a leather nut. I'm a leather lover. And the leather here is beautiful. But you get that animalic facet. I think it's coming from the oud. And, you know, it adds a little bit of that, of the dirtiness of human history that if you went back to antiquity, you would see. If you had a time machine, you would see some of that. So, sorry for being a little bit poetic on this, but this really did move me, even though it wasn't a first love, even though I didn't spray it on and go, oh my God, this is one of the best things I've ever smelled, and went and sat in the corner and, you know, smelled my hand all day and ignored my job. I will tell you that it took me down a journey that really only one or two other fragrances from the past have, and that's a big compliment. So I know this is a winding road to get to the finish line, but I hope I've at least conveyed my thoughts, how it made me feel. You have an understanding of the fragrance, but even if I was, one of the best wordsmiths in the world, I don't think I would be able to describe it how you would be able to understand the way that it smells, because it really does have to be inhaled, lived, and experienced, as Areej Doré says on their website, to be truly understood. I mean, that is the truth. It sounds like marketing BS, but it's good stuff. I can completely see why people just blind buy this stuff. I used to think the people that did that were crazy. I'm not so sure anymore. Maybe they had the right idea. Blind buy it, check it out. If it's one of the hits, if it's one of the ones that really moves you, you got a hit on your hands. If not, sell it. Someone will pay you double, triple what you paid for it. So, crazy marketing strategy, but it seems to be working. And, for the first time, I think I really kind of understand that mindset, because I never would have thought to do that before, but, it's something that maybe I will start doing in the future. So, pleasure to review this. I hope you felt that I did it justice. Russian Adam, thanks again for sending these to me. Let me know your thoughts down below. More people own these than I thought, actually. More of my subscribers have a lot of these Areej Dorés. I thought they were very rare, but obviously most of the people who are subscribed to my channel in these early days are the real fragrance fanatics, and they own stuff like this. So if you have experience with Antiquity, let me know. If you have experience with the house, let me know. If you agree, disagree with what I said about it, let me know. And remember, we're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers so I can do this top 100. It's driving me insane. I'm ready for it to be done with, because I'm still moving things around. It's like one notch, too. It's like I'm taking it from 98 to 99, or, 101 to 100. Is it in the top 100? Is it out? So I'm ready for it to be done. So once we get to 1,000 subs, I'm going to do my top 100 countdown of my favorite fragrances to wear. And, that's basically where we're at. So I hope you have enjoyed the review. A like and a subscription helps, but you don't have to, like I've said many a times before. And I love seeing your comments down below. So I love seeing your faces in the comments, as Eugene would say. So leave a comment. I will see you tomorrow with another review, hopefully. Cheers, guys. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.